Well, the Inside Metal film series started obviously in Los Angeles, where I grew up, and it was basically spawned from Warren Croyle, our executive producer, and Joe Floyd, the producer. They were talking about putting together a documentary series on the LA scene that just really captured the LA hard rock metal scene of the 80s. And I had known Joe Floyd played in the band Warrior, one of my favorite LA bands, Fighting for Europe, one of the classic albums of that era. And he had approached me about directing the movie. And while I was doing the interviews, I was thinking, you know what? We were talking to, Lars from Metallica, we were talking to Dave Meniketti, and all these people regarding the LA scene, because they were such a big part of the LA metal scene. Of course, Metallica started in LA. Y&T used to play LA every month back in the Starwood days. So, we had all these interviews of these people, as well as LA bands that were a big part of the San Francisco scene. Megadeth, David Ellison, people like that. So, I said, let's talk and ask some questions about San Francisco, because maybe we'll move on to that, and which is smart. So that's how the Bay Area thing started.
And thanks to social media, we were able to track down a lot of those musicians from that era, and did new interviews with them and talked about the good old days back in the 80s in the San Francisco Bay Area music scene.
Absolutely. And I thought it was really important, the same approach how we did the LA metal titles is let's kind of start from the beginning and let's cover the whole music scene, because again, the Bay Area has always been known for the thrash scene, which is great, which was obviously it was a predominant, it was a huge scene, but there was so much more to the Bay Area scene. So we again go back to the yesterday and today era, and we talked to Mike Varney and a lot of the players that were involved, not necessarily just the musicians.
And that's a great point you bring up. LA was mainly known for the glam aspect of it, the big hairspray, and all this kind of stuff. But there was more to LA than that.
Right.
San Francisco was the same thing. It was mainly known for its thrash scene, the Exodus, those kind of bands, Testament. But there was so much more to it, and it goes back into the 70s. The diversity of the music that was in the Bay Area was just incredible, and it continued through the 80s, even though it developed that image of being such a thrash haven.
And that's something that always bothered me. If the MTV era, the VH1 behind the music, they always concentrate on, like you said, LA was the glam thing. It was all about Motley Crue and Poison and the party, the glam, the glitter, the glitz, and it was kind of more image over music. And when I said I want to do, because there was so much great talent in LA. I mean, so many of the great, as the greatest guitar players and greatest, some unbelievable talent coming out of the Bay Area. And same thing with San Francisco. I mean, there's always that stigma that it was only this style of music, and it really wasn't. And we wanted to capture what the whole entire scene was about. And I think we've done a really good job on the Bay Area, thanks to John, thanks to Danny, who did a lot of interviews and brought in a lot of bands that, I was, somewhat aware of. And bands you don't hear as much, bands like Damage, that have come over, and, bands like Heathen and Vicious Rumors, who are huge, quite big, Lost Rocket. But rarely talked about. And then you had
that's because they were not on the thrash level. They were more traditional, more melodic, guitar driven. The scene was incredible. I mean, the richness of music has always been there. In the late 70s, there were the famous Days on the Green festivals where you name the band and they played there. Everybody from UFO, Thin Lizzy, a lot of the European bands came over. Some of the more American bands like Ted Nugent, Aerosmith, they all appeared at Days on the Green. And then as the early 80s came about, a place called the Old Waldorf in downtown San Francisco started having the Metal Mondays, and that really started the whole scene. The camaraderie, the bands started to pop up from all over. It was electrifying. Everybody loved going every week. We made it a rule to drive up here all the way from Monterey, where Metal Rendezvous was based, to come and see pretty much every Metal Monday show. The talent and the variety was just unbelievable. We got to make so many friends, and we got to listen to so much new music that we knew something magical was about to happen. And sure enough, as the 80s went on, it exploded and gained worldwide acclaim.
Yeah. And even in LA, it made such a huge impact. And you got to remember, this was pre-internet. And we're talking very early 80s, and there was a magazine called Kerrang! That came out of England in '81, and the first couple issues they had this pen pal section. That was the big thing, how you met people, and that's how tape trading and all that started. And that's how I met Ron Quintana, and I later met John Strednansky through Tim Corey with the Metal Rendezvous, and people like Brian Liu, and we became pen pals. And they would tell me about the San Francisco scene of the early 80s, and they would share with me a lot of the ads and the music and stuff, and I would read about them in Metal Mania and Metal Rendezvous, and hear about them from others. But it was all through pen pals and through tape trading. Even though I was so close to, I was in Los Angeles, it was still, back then I never really made it to the Bay Area for the music scene. It's a little bit later.
I think what you just touched upon was really the key. The San Francisco scene to me was more genuine. I think that it was just such a basic movement that started. The roots were with true love of the music. We wanted to write great songs. That was the attitude of every band. It wasn't necessarily we want to be the biggest band in the world, but we wanted to write great songs. We wanted to have fun at these shows, and we wanted to be genuine. This is what we believe in. This is the kind of music we want to play. And I felt that more up here in San Francisco than I did down in LA.
Yeah, well, I think what you say is San Francisco has always been more open when it comes to music. I mean, you go from the bands from the 60s, that whole hippie area with acid and all that. It was very open, whereas LA was always about the glamour and the glitz. It was more Hollywood. It was more about the movie industry and all that. And it was a place to break, to get the deal, when you came to LA, you had to have your A game. It was all about getting the big deal and playing. And the clubs knew that, and they kind of had that attitude toward you have to be a Hollywood band to play the Whiskey or the Roxy and all that, where I think the clubs in San Francisco seem way more open.
The highlights, I can't even count them anymore. Obviously, my first show ever was here in San Francisco at the Cow Palace with Kiss and Cheap Trick, the night Elvis Presley died, which is kind of a unique way to remember that. But the next highlight was that first Metal Monday that I mentioned earlier. It was Motley Crue actually came up from LA, but it just opened us up to a whole new world of music, all right? And then the Metal Mondays continued throughout. The shows here were incredible. Saxon was one of the first of those British bands that came over and played the three Keystones, the whole family, on 3 consecutive nights. Of course, we went to see all 3. Loudness came over from Japan early on and did their first shows in America here in the Bay Area. And then the countless talented bands that were based here, there was Lost Rocket, Vicious Rumors, Steel, with the song Guillotine Nightmare, one of my favorite songs from that era. Damage, of course, was a great band that I got involved with and worked with for a while. Later on, Exodus and Testament that came around, and some of even the glamier bands like Roadrunner and ultimately Vain. Again, as I mentioned earlier, the plethora of talent and the range and the diversity of talent was incredible. So many highlights. If I had to name the one, I would still have to say that it was those 3 Saxon shows, because that really put San Francisco on the map. Oh boy, there were quite a few, but I got to say my favorite place to go shows was the Stone in San Francisco, right there on Broadway. That was kind of, I mentioned the Old Waldorf, and it started all. It was a great club. It was easy to get to. It was easy parking. It was kind of in a neighborhood that you wouldn't expect a nightclub to be. The Stone was more in that nitty-gritty area of San Francisco, right there on Broadway, kind of more where a rock club really belonged. So ultimately, some of the favorite shows that I've seen there throughout the 80s were at the Stone. The Cow Palace for the big shows was always a neat place to go visit. And of course, as you mentioned, Day on the Green at the Oakland Coliseum. But from the clubs, the Stone has to be it. Its sister venue, the Keystone down in Palo Alto, was another one that we went to quite a bit, and so a little different. It was a little different vibe. It wasn't quite as rough and sweaty as maybe the Stone was in San Francisco, but 2 great venues that are unforgettable. Soon I hope. Bob, come on,
That seems
give us
to
a
be
scoop.
the million-dollar question here. Yeah, we've had a few changes and stuff in the editorial staff. As I said, Reality Check TV's Danny Shipman is editing it now, doing the finishing touches. So we're right at the end. We were going to try to push it to get it out before the end of 2019, but we didn't want to rush the release. So it will be out. It will be out. I'm going on record here at the beginning of 2020.
And we're gonna have several parties and several showcases
Absolutely.
where we're gonna invite everybody who's watching this is gonna be invited.
Yeah, we're going to do some screenings, at least a couple here in the San Francisco Bay Area. We'll plan one from Los Angeles, maybe even Vegas, and maybe a few other cities. It depends. We'll see how things go, but we'll probably do several screenings prior to the release. So probably, I would say early spring of 2020, maybe late.
And to close us off, remind everybody we're gonna bring the hammer down, and what's gonna be the movie's
His
title?
favorite line. The Bay Area Godfathers coming out on Metal Rock Films on DVD and digital. Yeah!